don't want to unnecessarily scare anybody, but I also want to just get real. So how this is one of those things that I think so many people, again, if you work around hazardous materials, you're in construction, this is kind of a way of life for you. You probably already know a lot of this stuff and you live it out. But it's whom I worry more for are maybe industries, businesses that operate maybe a little more on the fringe and think, oh, I'm a little white collar. Yeah, of course, if somebody I can't have snags in my carpet where people fall, but this stuff doesn't really apply to me. I'm just I don't need an emergency action plan. That just seems like overkill. I do want you to unpack for us what are the consequences if you get it wrong, if God forbid there is an actual injury, maybe there's not a terrible injury, but you get reported, and what fines might look like. Help us understand the context.
Absolutely. So I'll start with, I believe in 2020 or 2021, the OSHA conducted over 24,000 inspections, right? And,
Wow.
Not all result in citations, but many of them do. And so if OSHA determines that an employee is exposed to a hazardous condition, right, and it doesn't need to cause harm, it may be one that is likely to cause harm, then it will issue a citation. And that's going to be something in writing, and citations are generally, issued within 6 months of the occurrence of a violation, and they go in terms of seriousness. So the lowest level violation is a de minimis violation, right? And it's really not even a citation. It's just a notice of this violation. There is no direct or immediate relationship to safety or health, and there are no monetary penalties for that. That's the one that's not so scary. But then you have serious violations and other than serious violations, and each violation of those comes with a maximum penalty of $15,625. So that's where there's a substantial probability that death or serious physical harm could result from whatever condition OSHA has identified. Or a practice or a method or operations, whatever it might be. But then the real bad ones, right, are the willful and repeat violations. A willful violation or a repeat violation carries a maximum penalty of $156,000 and $259. So that's a whole lot. Willful violation is going to be shown when the employer acts with intentional disregard to OSHA requirements. So that might be the situation we discussed where, someone gets seriously injured during an evacuation, and it turns out the company has no emergency action plan, right? That might be something that's willful because they've disregarded. It was a free-for-all. Everyone was running out of the facility. And people got trampled. That's that would be a willful violation potentially. And also the repeat violations. If there's a previous citation for a similar type of violation, and generally within the past 5 years, the company will get hit with that $156,000 maximum penalty. Of course, it could be lower based on circumstances. But they can go after that maximum amount. There's also, if there's an imminent danger, if OSHA sees something and it is just like we said, there's electrical wires exposed and they are getting wet, and we see sparking, something horrible like that, where there is an immediate risk that someone is going to get electrocuted or harmed. They can just forego their normal procedures and go into federal court to get an injunction against the company, unless the company voluntarily agrees to immediately abate that condition. And then Brian, so there are serious penalties here.
Brian, how do these things usually show up as investigations? So clearly there are higher risk industries, right? Road construction, roofing, that you're going to have, it's reasonable to expect at an undetermined frequency, an OSHA inspector is going to just show up on the job site, right? And so that's probably why most folks are somewhat prepared for that. It also, I mean, this is not legal advice, but it's also probably pretty reasonable, because I mean, I've never seen it in my career where an OSHA inspector comes into a white collar office and says, "Hey, I'm doing an inspection." Therefore, my fear is lulling white collar industries and businesses to sleep about what the actual risk is here. If it's like an overtime or minimum wage, these things often are, it's an employee, a disgruntled employee, former employee who makes a report. Maybe it's a Department of Labor, maybe an attorney files suit on their behalf. How do these things usually manifest? Is it simply whether you do or don't get inspected, or are there other means?
Right. No, excellent question. So there absolutely are, targeted inspections on certain industries, but those are actually the minority of inspections OSHA does. So of those 24,000 plus OSHA inspections in prior year that I discussed, the majority, I believe 57% of those were not targeted, meaning they arose because of an employee complaint, a referral from maybe workers' comp, right? An employee reports an injury to workers' comp, and it's pretty clear that there might be a workplace condition that OSHA would be interested in, or in an inspection it can occur when you have a serious injury or a fatality. So yeah, there are many ways that an office, while your typical white collar office is not likely to be subjected to a targeted inspection, the majority of inspections are not that way. So it's going to be a complaint, and OSHA will just show up on site, right? Similar to a DOL auditor, for wage and hour purposes, and they are allowed to come in there with no advance notice, and they're going to there's usually a process. There's an opening conference when they'll discuss what the scope of the inspection is, the need for interviews, a walkthrough, review of records. Then they'll do the site evaluation and walk around, and then possibly interview employees, review documents and other things that might be relevant, and then they'll close the investigation and make their findings. So it's very important to understand that for employers, right? Because even if you're a white collar office, you know what to do when an OSHA inspector shows up, right? Someone should from management should be with that inspector the whole time. When they're walking around doing the evaluation and the inspector is taking photos, someone from the company should be taking photos. So there's you don't just allow them to go in and get on with it. You want to follow them around. Ask the main tip I would give any employer, regardless of industry, when an OSHA inspector is on site doing an inspection, ask questions. Ask about the scope, about what they're looking for, about issues. Absolutely ask questions. And also make the inspector follow the workplace safety standards, right? If a hard hat's required, make them wear a hard hat. If there's employee screening, make them go through that screening. They're generally allowed to go in and and inspect as they see. Of course, if they go outside the scope of the inspection, the company can try to rein them back in through discussing that with them. If they see other things, right? If the inspector is there for one purpose, but they see some other hazards, they're going to address those as well.
Yeah. Maybe the last thing I would maybe just add for guidance, and I'll let you close then, Brian. Whatever our topics we talk in this show, so we talk about a lot of HR compliance stuff. And the goal is to give the best information we can so you can stay compliant, so you can build great teams and grow your business. a lot of times people make mistakes. They don't follow the law, and it's almost never on purpose. It's not people, I hate that law. That's a stupid law. I'm choosing to not follow it. It's unwittingly not following laws because the HR laws are so darn complex and they're changing so fast, and there's more and more of them every day. And the reality is, if you treat your employees really well and they know you, love you, trust you, and think that you have their back and their best interest in mind, you're going to get a lot of latitude from employees. And if they think they're being wronged or they think they're in an unsafe work environment, they're probably going to tell you about it and give you opportunity to remedy the situation. But this just screams for this, and I keep thinking about all of the white collar type jobs where employers might not realize how much risk they have. That was a really important stat that you shared, Brian. 57% are not the result of a random inspection from an OSHA inspector. They're coming out of the result of injuries or workers' comp cases and whatnot. But also disgruntled employees. If a disgruntled employee goes into the break room and there's a switch plate that is cracked and you can maybe see some exposed wires. I mean, I've walked into businesses that you can just tell that thing has been there for years, right? And it's not okay. It's going to be an OSHA violation. But if all the employees love and trust and respect you, and you're highly communicative, and you show them respect, they're probably going to at least tell you, "Hey, can you fix that? That makes me feel really uncomfortable." Versus just arms crossed, "I hate my boss. I'm going to go report this sucker," and all of a sudden you got an inspector at your door for something that was a 57-cent switch plate at Home Depot. So to me, compliance is compliance, and hopefully this is a helpful hour-ish conversation for folks to take OSHA seriously, understand what it is. At the end of the day, the best thing you can do to stay compliant is to have great relationships with your employees so that when things aren't perfect, you can work on it together and get them fixed. Brian, is there anything else specific, maybe comment on that, or specific on OSHA that you'd want to close with today?
Yeah, and I'll be brief, but yeah, absolutely. So I think the key is, like you said, if you're going to have, a good relationship with employees, excuse me, then, one of the things is keeping them safe. And, addressing workplace hazards is very important. And it can be as little as, a clean place to eat or clean bathrooms, right? Those are covered. So if you're a company that doesn't think this applies to you, think again. It very much does, and it pays to take these compliance steps.
Yeah, Brian, who knew we could talk so long about OSHA? I know there's a lot there, but the thing I hope everybody walks away with is it doesn't matter how big you are, what industry you are, where you are located. OSHA applies to everybody. Reiterate that stat: 57% of all OSHA investigations are not the result of some random audit where you got an OSHA inspector who shows up at your door unannounced. It's the result of an injury that happened in your workplace, whether it was a work comp claim or somebody reported you, that comes in from a different direction. So we have to provide safe work environments for our employees. We need to do it in a compliant way and in a way that shows respect to the employees to give us opportunity to remedy situations.